Hey everybody, I'm here with Carrie Vaughn, who is our opening act in the new Dystopia Triptych.
Ooh,
And
what pretty books.
they're the most beautiful books ever. And you wrote the most beautiful stories ever, which is why we put them right up front to
Oh,
suck everyone in. Such an honored position, and it was we all really were blown away by your stories, and think we're putting our best foot forward with you. And I hope you can handle the pressure of that.
oh, thank you. That's hugely flattering.
Yeah, well, you wrote Humdinger stories, and they, um, man, I don't know. I can't wait to hear what you were thinking about when you wrote them. But for me as a creative, it really, this idea of like having to constantly produce and be on this treadmill and you can't stop, like that cut a little too close to home for me.
The more I think about these stories, the less they feel like science fiction to me. Um, the initial idea came that I had just gotten a smartphone. I was a late adopter. I've only had my smartphone for a few years. And then started using apps like Duolingo and playing some of these games where you realize pretty quickly that the job of the games in particular, where they're monetized, is to keep you on as long as possible, to keep you sucked into that platform so that you'll keep playing and keep watching the ads and keep spending, $1 here and $1 there so you can get more lives, so you keep playing, so you can get the things, so you can reach the bonus, so you can make new levels. Gamified is the term, and it's everywhere now. And Duolingo uses it very well. You have to, one more day, you have a 3-day streak, you have a 20-day streak, spend this many points to, repair your streak because you missed a day. And then combine that with like stuff like this is going on in actual workplaces right now. I have a friend who works for a big company that I will not be naming right now to protect her. But they have a program where the employees get points. Like if they do something cool, their supervisor can give them a couple of points, or they can give each other points, if they do something awesome. And they can trade these points in for like actual money things. They can trade them in for like waffle makers or, nights in a hotel. It encourages, it improves morale. It encourages participation in the company. It encourages people to kind of watch each other and look out for each other and reward each other. But it's like you were saying, it's also this treadmill where once you kind of get sucked into it, it's like, what else can I do to get points? They get points for being on a fitness plan that they can log through the company.
It sounds like a bad Black Mirror episode to me.
We are very, very close to a kind of corporate feudalism right now. If you especially look at like some of the big companies like Amazon, they're talking about instituting their own health plans. And Google in the Bay Area has their own bus system to bring employees in, since some of them have to live. None of them can afford to live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And they're even talking about, apartments, corporate sponsored apartments. So basically it's the old company store again, but it's at this kind of very gamified high level,
and that's in your story too.
Cyberpunk. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where
no,
if you get a job at PanCorp, you live in their building, and leaving the building becomes like not optional, and it's a very captive user set. And I tried Animal Crossing during quarantine, and it really gets on you if you don't show up. I haven't been on now like over a month. I bet if I showed up, it's just going to be like a public shaming. Oh, there'll be weeds everywhere, but everyone's just going to make me feel terrible for not being there, which makes you not want to go back now. Once you stay away long enough, you don't want to re-enter the system.
And it's all, we're being manipulated. Like all of these systems are there to manipulate us. And I just wonder to what extent most people realize that they're being manipulated. Something like Duolingo, it's actually really helpful. You're learning a language and there's these, bells and whistles that sort of encourage you to keep working at it. But it's manipulative. It's using these psychological, emotional hooks to keep you in the system. And to what extent do we not even realize how much we're being manipulated by those systems? So yeah, it's a lot of the stuff in those stories are happening right now. They're real. It's there.
It's very real, yeah, and it's impacting us every day. I read an interview with a pretty high up person at one of the social media companies, can't remember which one, who said that they will not let their own kids use their product because they know how addictive they're working to make it. And they talked about how they would A/B test like every shade of blue and every, you know, just how much they round the corners of an icon, and they'll A/B test everything and see which button placement gets more engagement and more stickiness for user engagement. And so they're constantly just micromanaging how addictive they can make these things.
Yeah, there are a lot of people working really hard on just figuring out those exact details because they matter, and it's all data, and there's data crunchers, and they know what they're doing. And that's kind of the scary thing about it to me, is they know exactly what they're doing, and it's all done on purpose, and it's all to keep us logged into the system for just as long as possible.
Now to turn that on its head, when I'm writing, I'm always trying to figure out how to end a chapter, not in a way that makes it easier for the reader to close the book and set it aside, but end a chapter in a way that they have to turn the page and read the next chapter. And I get so excited when I hear from people who got no sleep because of one of my books, who missed a subway stop, who, you know, like basically didn't get any chores done, just wrecked their life a little bit. And they always like share those stories as compliments. They mean them as compliments, and I take it as a compliment. So don't we kind of do the same thing with our fiction that these tech companies are doing with their apps?
Oh, it's human nature. You know, if just to kind of spin it out a little bit, you know, how much of religion, you know, religious services and things, you got to keep people coming in the doors and, you know, putting their coins in the collection plate. You know, you promise things, you know, if you keep doing this, you will be good with God. You know, if you do all of these things, if you, you know, give the right money to the right people, the right things will happen. It's, you know, human beings want to belong. And we want to feel like we're in control of our situations. You know, carrying the right spearhead, you know, back when you're a hunter-gatherer, you know, that guy over there has that bronze spearhead. I've just been writing stories set in the Neolithic period, and you know, that transition between the Stone Age and the Bronze Age is super fascinating. Like, how did that work? And it's like, well, those guys over there have that better thing. So how do we get the better thing? How do we, you know, be the cool people in the culture? You know, so it's all, I think it's all part of the same kind of human impulse to just be in control and be on top of things. And
it's wild about how long it took for some of that technology to change. Like there were you know, certain Stonehenge traditions that were around for thousands of years. It's just like we can't use the same cell phone for a year without feeling like someone's got a better camera. And then you look at like the Clovis point tradition and spearhead technology, and it's like you find the same spearhead all over like North and South America for thousands of years.
Well, but is that another manipulation, the planned obsolescence of modern technology? That companies make more money if things go obsolete faster.
I'm always wary about blaming the people who are meeting our demands. Like, you know, people will say that the local news just, you know, shows shocking things, but like if they just showed good news for 30 minutes, no one would watch. Like, we kind of create the demand that they fill. So it's so easy for us to blame the people that provide our vices to us, but it's, you know, we're begging for them, and we gobble it up
because we're very predictable. You know, kind of circling back around, it doesn't matter how often you tell people on Facebook not to answer the quizzes. You know, don't do those little questionnaires that, you know, your first name and your birthday or whatever, you know, to come up with your sparkly princess name or whatever. It doesn't matter how many times you tell people not to do that, they still do it. And why? Why do they do it? I don't know. You know, it's social media in its current form has been around for over a decade now. So it's not like it's this newfangled thing that we haven't figured out. It's like, we know, we figured it out, but people still feed the data mines and still do all of these things online that they're not supposed to do.
Yeah, you know, everyone has to learn. Everyone has to learn from their own mistakes, and I don't know if it was P.T. Barnum or if this is just attributed to him, but the idea of a sucker born every minute.
Yeah.
I think about it all the time, and especially, you know, you write books and you think that everyone has read them, but there's someone coming along right now that's just discovering that they love science fiction and they're getting their first Carrie Vaughn short story, and you think you've exhausted, like, you know, your entire marketplace, but the marketplace is constantly churning and being added to.
And that's like what you were saying, you know, there's good things about it. Like some of the fitness apps that use the same kind of gamified
totally counting
techniques.
Your steps. And
but a lot of people have found a whole lot of benefit from that. So yeah, I guess that's the question, is like, where is the line? You know, Sarah in the story, you know, she made the decision that made sense at the time because she needed what the company was providing.
Yeah, that's the other aspect of your story that I love, this GoFundMe idea of, you know, and if you have there's a medical need, suddenly you know, have to raise money from other people to pay for it instead of, you know, the society having some kind of safety net for people who have bad luck.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's something that you think about a lot, and you see how many people are out of work now with the with coronavirus pandemic. How much was that a focus for you in the story?
Absolutely, it was. Because I feel like we're in a system where something's got to give at some point. And, you know, the really, I'm trying to think of how to, like, the really extreme capitalists would say, well, yes, corporations ought to step up and provide those sorts of things. So you can make the argument that PanCorp is providing Sarah with the healthcare that she needs, that she was not able to get anywhere else because of bad circumstances. You know, it's not her fault that the car that hit her didn't have insurance. You know, that there's all these things that are baked into the system. And then PanCorp, you know, and by some ideologies, you know, it should be a corporate solution, and PanCorp has a corporate solution for that. But it's feudalism. It's also feudalism. You know, she gets locked into a system where she doesn't really have any choices about where she can go or what she can do after that.
One thing that that occurred to me a few years ago, I was having a conversation with some friends who were in Cuba, and we were talking about different solutions to the same problems because they have very different ideas there. And still baked into our language, people who are kind of products of the thinking of the 60s and 70s, corporations bad, government good. I wonder if that mantra has outlived its usefulness, because not that corporations are good and governments are bad, but our ability to get concessions out of corporations is so much more powerful and quicker than out of government. Just with, we can't get the government to regulate Facebook. But as soon as we got some advertisers last month to pull their money, like Facebook had to, like we were able to actually use social media to pressure Coca-Cola and people that advertise on Facebook, and got real policy change done more quickly. I remember in North Carolina when the the trans laws were in place, we couldn't get the government to do anything, but we started pressuring companies, and people were pulling conferences out of North Carolina as soon as we hurt their bottom line.
Well, and that's where it comes down to, the bottom line. I think the issue with trusting companies to do the right thing. Yeah, sure, they'll do the right thing under pressure when it's the bottom line that's being impacted. The thing about corporations is their primary goal is not to take care of people, it's to make money.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's where we sort of have to mitigate our trust in corporations, that, you know, especially, I don't want to talk too much about the 3 stories, but by the time you get to the last story, you realize that they care about Sarah only insofar as she can make money for them.
Totally.
But the
she is the product, right?
Yeah, she is, what was it? It just came out a couple of months ago. Somebody, the capital labor resource or something like that, like basically, you know, the value of labor provided by workers. And they came up with this weird, like postmodern term for it that was just completely dystopian, of course. But ideally, we would have a system where everybody has basic human value just for being a person, and not based on what they can produce and how much money they make and what they're worth as consumers. And I think that's where a lot of just dystopian fiction and just these dystopian worlds in general, what it all comes down to is, you know, are people valued just for being living, breathing human people in the world who inherently have value in themselves?
I wish everyone had that that viewpoint. And what I worry about is that we're not going to be able to convince people to be good for no other reason. Like, we have to give them an incentive to adopt that viewpoint. And it's cynical and sad to think that, but like,
Yeah, it'd be
explain.
nice if we all.
It'd be wonderful, man. Like, just everybody, if, you know, the amount of money that we spend around the world, like protecting ourselves from each other. If we just all decided to spend that money in science and exploration and healthcare and education and visiting other stars, like anything would be possible. But convincing people to do what's good for the group is, I don't know, the challenge of civilization and humanity for thousands and thousands of years.
Well, and that's the question from the last few months of pandemic and lockdown. So that there's a question for you: is it, how weird and disconcerting is it to have the trilogy that we've been working on for a couple of years now, right, come out like right now at this moment in time where these questions are like really really pivotal, like they're really
it's
crazy at the
for
forefront
me
in a way that they weren't a couple of years ago.
And, well, when I started writing my stories, they weren't as meaningful as they are now, and that's not something I'm happy about at all. Like, I would much rather these be more abstract, but I look through all these stories, and almost every one of them, it resonates more today than they did when they were written. And that's not how this should unfold. You know, we should be able to write these stories as cautionary tales, more about mistakes from the past than contemporary issues that seem to only be getting worse. But it's every one of these interviews, who the author has been like, I have to tell people I can't, you know, I promise you I was writing this 1.5 years ago. It seems like I wrote them last week. So it's super troubling for me, but it is going to influence, I think, our ability to write stories that take abstract ideas and land them with a lot more force, because now they're not abstract to the lives of the people who are reading them. So when we write about like who's actually important in society, it's not abstract anymore. We could shut everything down, but the people who had to like sell us our groceries and farm our food and drive products to and from hubs to destinations and to walk them to our front door and deliver them, like some of the lowest paid, lowest valued jobs were the only ones deemed necessary, and everyone else, like, the world went on without, you know, them doing their silly things. So my wish would be that we would take from this, like, we need to value these people and pay them more and raise the minimum wage and get universal health care. But honestly, seeing our attention span, I really fear that nothing will change on the other side of this.
Well, that's depressing.
And I'm like the eternal optimist. I'm the like most happy-go-lucky, light at the end of the tunnel person. I do think some good things will come out of it. I really think that police reform will not be like, I was worried about the Me Too movement becoming a flash in the pan, but it's something that's really made permanent change, and we're just in the right direction. I think Black Lives Matter is going to gain a foothold that doesn't lose, and we can build on from here.
Yeah, I agree, because, you know, especially I was very cynical about Me Too when it started, just because we had been through these cycles before. There was the Yes All Women happened, you know, hashtag happened a couple years before, and you know, every few years we would, you know, get a big blow up, and then it would all go away. So I was pretty convinced that Me Too would be the same thing. And then it turns out, no, it brought down Harvey Weinstein. You know, it's got staying power. It's actually making a difference. And so that raises a question that like that and the current Black Lives Matter protests are making an impact that similar protests in the past have not made. And so I am curious about like this historical moment. Like there's something over the last year yeah, that's something I haven't thought too much about, you know, in any kind of thoughtful way. But it's like everything has come to a head in the last couple of years, and I hope we can come out of it having actually learned something this time.
Yeah, me too. I think just getting more people engaged in social issues and politics, and more people out voting. If we can get the young people who are taking to the streets, get them engaged in the political process, and get different people running for office. That's something that I think started in 2016. We saw it in 2018, like a lot more women and people of color running for office.
Well, and not taking for granted our comfort zone. I think that's, you know, a lot of us maybe took for granted that that progress was going to be steady and consistent, and it's like, no, we can lose it all. You know, it won't actually take much for us to lose our comfortable world here in, you know, middle class America if we don't fight for it. You know, if we're not vigilant. So.
Well, you're such a prolific writer. You had Bannerless came out. Was that last year?
Oh gosh, no, it's been 3 years now.
No way.
Yeah.
Because I read that like
an
early draft. Wow. And I don't know how many short stories you have published. It's like tons.
It's over 100. I lost count.
Incredible.
I have to sit down and count.
I had to scrounge together everything I'd ever written to put together an anthology of my stuff. And you've written 3 of my favorite stories in the anthology, and I don't mind upsetting the other authors by saying it, but love your prose, love your voice, and what's next? What do you have coming out that we should be on the lookout?
Well, the Robin Hood stories, which is super interesting that I've been writing a lot more historical fiction. I think over the last years, most of my ideas are like, no, I don't want to write about now or the future. I want to write about 800 years ago. You know, that's much more comforting to me right now.
Yeah. Make Sherwood great again.
Yeah, well, they survived that. I can survive this, right?
Yeah.
My next novel is called Questland. And I've been trying to come up with the pithy, you know, elevator, you know, pitch line for it. It's a high-tech LARP gone horribly, horribly wrong.
That's a perfect pitch.
A billionaire genius has decided to build his island fantasy resort where sufficiently advanced technology really does resemble magic.
So you can have dragons and
you can have dragons.
Magic
you can have the rings of power, and my main character is the literature professor who's sort of sent in to be the guide for the team who's trying to take the island back from the mutineers.
I love it. You know, we need like a fantasy version of Ready Player One, but this is like, instead of virtual, it's real life.
That's exactly how I've been pitching it. It's Ready Player One for Dungeons and Dragons nerds. So
I'm sold. When's that going to be out? I'm dying to read that.
Hopefully early 2021.
Okay. Well, if you need a beta reader,
spring, you
know where to send me a manuscript. I would love that. Well, I'm a huge fan. It's such an honor I'm so glad we are now living in a world where you're so captive that you have to get on Zoom with me and answer some questions.
You know, I'm old enough that video chats are still cool. You know, this is the future.
It's like the Hollow Room,
promised, right? Yeah.
Star Trek.
Cool. It's totally Star Trek. I love it.
I can't wait for you to get these in your hand.
I know. They're so pretty.
And check them out. Yeah, they really are beautiful. Like everything about these books I'm really proud of, except for how germane they are. I wish that was not so much a thing. Well, thanks again. Good seeing you, and best of luck in all things.
You as well. It's good talking with you.